Tonight, when the sun goes down, you will likely flip a switch. Instantly bright light floods your room, and you will not think twice. Yet for 99.9% of human history, that simple action was entirely impossible. When the solar disk vanished, absolute darkness claimed the entire landscape. Modern humans almost never experience this unforgiving and oppressive nocturnal void. For over 300,000 long years, every single one of your ancestors spent half their lives in blackness. They possessed no candles or lamps for the vast majority of time. There was only the midnight sky, the distant cold stars above, and whatever embers they kept alive. This meant spending nearly 14 hours shrouded in an impenetrable ocean of pure, dark silence. To understand their psychological reality, we must examine the ancient wild. Human vision is remarkably poorly adapted for navigating the dark terrain. Fierce apex predators possessed ultimate advantages. Large leopards, hyenas, and wolves tracked prey with exceptional nocturnal vision. Stepping into the shadows meant you could easily face severe survival threats or succumb to the perils of the wild. Then everything changed, with fire. Archaeological evidence from Wonderwerk Cave, situated within distant South Africa, shows controlled fire 1 million years ago. This element did not just warm the shivering bodies of early hominids, it structurally reorganized the human day. Before this monumental and critical discovery, our ancestors behaved like other primates. At twilight, you found a tree or huddled in a shallow cave, remaining entirely frozen until dawn. Movement after dark meant certain destruction. A crackling campfire changed this equation. It established a protective barrier measuring roughly 30 feet in diameter. Safe within this glowing sanctuary, lethal predators would rarely venture. Outside that boundary lay extinction. Anthropologists tracking modern hunter-gatherers confirm that individuals wandering away face immediate and fatal predatory strikes. But safety was only the beginning. Fire gifted humanity extra hours, which they never possessed before. The useful day previously ended at sunset, yielding 12 hours in summer and barely 8 during bleak winters. Combustion suddenly added 2 to 4 usable hours to the standard biological clock. Over thousands of subsequent generations, this extension altered our species permanently. In 2014, an anthropologist named Polly Wiesner published a highly groundbreaking study in the National Academy of Sciences. She recorded extensive nocturnal conversations among the traditional Jew/Hoansi Bushmen within the remote Kalahari Desert. They represent one of the last groups preserving our ancient ancestral lifestyle. Her findings were wholly unexpected. During the busy sunlit hours, about 80% of daily conversations focused heavily on practical matters. They discussed complex hunting strategies, resource location, and economic cooperation. Daytime communication was strictly business. But around the nighttime fire, the linguistic landscape shifted dramatically. An astonishing 81% of conversations transformed into rich historical storytelling. They shared legends of distant lands, epic adventures, and ancestral folklore and humor that unified the clan. Wiesner argued that human culture was forged within these embers. The campfire became our first theater, our first academic lecture hall, and our very first church. It allowed abstract language to blossom, passing knowledge across successive generations and forging tribal identity. It forced us to look beyond the immediate and desperate present and imagine worlds not yet realized. Yet the deep night held another fascinating biological secret entirely. It is a forgotten reality that modern science only recently uncovered. Your biological architecture was never designed to sleep in one solid block. In 2001, a prominent historian named researcher Roger E. Ekirch published a monumental historical paper. He spent 16 years analyzing thousands of ancient archival records. He discovered over 500 references spanning smoothly across multiple centuries, from ancient, medieval prayer books, legal depositions, and personal diaries to the epic verses of Homer's Odyssey. They all detailed an identical phenomenon. They spoke of first sleep and subsequent restorative second sleep.
Before the dawn of the industrial age, human rest was naturally divided. People drifted away after twilight, rested for roughly 4 hours, and then naturally awakened afterwards. They remained awake for 1 to 2 hours in the dead of night, before returning to sleep until dawn.
This was not a medical disorder. This was the universal baseline for the entire human populace. During this midnight watchful period, humanity engaged in diverse activities. A 16th century French physician explicitly recommended this specific window for couples wishing to conceive children, noting it produced moments of profound relaxation and ultimate peak well-being. Others utilized the quiet hours to visit their nearby neighbors, interpret their fresh, vivid dreams, or engage in deep contemplation. An educational manual from the 1500s advised students that this watch was the absolute finest time for study and serious reflection. The mind was uniquely tranquil, and the external world was utterly still. Modern historians read these documents for decades without understanding them. They routinely mistranslated ancient Greek and obscure medieval Latin phrases, forcing the text to fit our modern consolidated sleeping habits. However, we must maintain academic objectivity. Modern field anthropologists correctly note that this unique biphasic pattern may not be entirely universal. Evidence suggests it heavily depended on geographical location and latitude. Communities enduring dark northern winters stretching up to 14 hours relied heavily on this broken cycle. It may have been less pronounced in equatorial regions where daylight remained stable throughout the year. Mechanisms varied across the globe. Nevertheless, the underlying biology remains potent. In 1992, an expert psychiatrist named Thomas Ware conducted an experiment at the National Institute of Mental Health. He selected a group of healthy volunteers and restricted all forms of artificial illumination. For one entire testing month, they endured 14 hours of darkness, replicating the exact historical conditions of our distant primitive ancestors. Within mere weeks, a pattern re-emerged. Every single participant naturally adopted the ancient split sleep schedule. Without any explicit external instruction, their internal and ancient evolutionary programming woke up from its long slumber. Ware measured their hormonal profiles during that midnight waking state and successfully unlocked something extraordinary. Their brains flooded with prolactin. This is the precise hormone associated with quiet, deep meditation and states of profound bliss. Subjects described an unprecedented peace, a quiet and reflective consciousness that modern humans never experience. So, what destroyed this ancient state? The answer is simple: illumination. During the 1600s, European cities began installing public street lamps. Paris led the movement under Louis XIV, seeking to drastically curb urban crime. Great London followed shortly after. The night was systematically tamed. Then came affordable tallow candles, followed by gaslighting infrastructure throughout the entire 1800s era. Industrial factories demanded night shifts, breaking the historical ties binding mankind to the sun. Finally, in 1879, Thomas Edison commercialized the famous incandescent bulb. Within a single, rapid generation, humanity effectively displaced the shadows and successfully subjugated the night. Consider the origin of curfew. It derives from the French couvre-feu, which literally means cover fire. In medieval towns, a nightly bell ordered citizens to extinguish hearths. Night was legally meant for darkness. Walking outside after dark hours without carrying a burning lantern was strictly illegal in Europe. The darkness belonged to outlaws and widely perceived supernatural dangers. We must acknowledge the immense progress this massive technological triumph brought. Artificial light was not a disaster. It saved millions of human lives by enabling emergency midnight surgeries. It radically lowered urban violence and extended overall life expectancy. It allowed modern civilization to flourish, but this victory carried a cost. Modern humans remain heavily exposed to intense and endless artificial light for 7 to 8 hours after sunset. This constant radiation, especially blue light emitted from ubiquitous digital screens, actively suppresses your melatonin production. This neurological suppression delays sleepiness, forcing your internal biological clock into permanent and chaotic deregulation. Your ancient retina cannot distinguish between a light bulb and the sun. When photons strike your eyes at 11 p.m., Your brain assumes it is noon. It delays vital hormone release, fragments your valuable nightly rest, and shatters your circadian rhythm. Studies prove that camping for 1 week without any modern artificial lighting effectively resets the biological clock by nearly 2 full hours. Melatonin production realigns with sunset, proving how quickly ancestral programming can reclaim its rightful territory. We did not merely alter schedules, we erased an entire dimension of the human conscious experience. Today, many individuals worry intensely that they suffer from chronic insomnia. They turn to medical interventions. Yet under modern evolutionary science, this is not necessarily a malfunction. Your body might simply be replicating an ancient, buried survival mechanism. It is your DNA remembering how it was designed to function. Our ancestors spent their nights in a natural, cyclical rhythm. They gathered around glowing embers, sharing stories that constructed civilizations. They experienced the quiet watch of deep 2 a.m. reflection. They witnessed a pristine night sky where the brilliant Milky Way was visible from their doorsteps. We traded that profound connection for a simple plastic light switch. And most of us never realized exactly what we threw away.